Undercover boss gets burger, opens it, and immediately calls the kitchen manager. He just wanted a simple burger. Not to test anyone. Not to stir up drama. Just a burger, exactly how he imagined it 18 years ago when he first wrote the recipe down in pencil in a small rented kitchen. A burger that could fill his stomach. A burger that could reassure him the system was still running smoothly. But the moment he opened the bun, everything stopped. It wasn't the taste. It was the cold seeping into his fingertips, cold as ice. The meat didn't look like it had just been cooked. There was a crack on the cheese, the sauce had settled in an unnatural way, and underneath he saw a tiny scrap of paper stuck to the edge, a ripped expiration label, but still readable use by 10/19. Today was the 23 ARD. Michael Foster sat frozen. In the corner of the restaurant, no one recognized him as the founder of Foster's Grill. With an old baseball cap and a faded brown jacket, he looked just like any middle-aged man stopping by to escape the rain, grabbing a quick lunch and leaving without a trace. But no one knew in just a few minutes he would stop the entire restaurant in its tracks. The server's name was Nathan, around 19 years old, just started 2 weeks ago, standing near the soda machine. He was scrolling on his phone, giggling at something through a wireless earbud. Michael noticed his eyes flicking toward the kitchen where a woman with brown hair tied in a bun was frowning and saying something to the line cook. Her name was Megan, the shift manager for Location 7. Michael had seen her name a few times in reports, an employee with good performance, adaptable, cost-conscious, and practical. Those words used to please him. Now, he wasn't so sure. At the table behind him, a woman whispered, "Try ordering something else." The burger I had tasted sour, not sure if it was the sauce or the meat. Michael turned just enough to see a mother and daughter. The mother looked about 40 in a faux fur coat. The little girl, maybe 10, was staring at her fries like she was afraid to eat them. The voice wasn't loud, but to him it rang like a bell. A reflex stirred in him, a memory of the anonymous letter sent to the head office just last week, shaky handwriting that read, "Someone needs to check the food quality at Location 7. They're using expired ingredients. I can't give my name, but I saw it happen." Back then, he didn't believe it. Now he knew he was wrong. Michael stood up, carried his tray to the counter, set it down. Gently. Nathan quickly pulled out his earbud, standing up straight, awkwardly. "Can I help you, sir?" His voice held a flicker of nervousness. Michael didn't answer right away. He pointed to the opened burger. "I want to speak to whoever's in charge of the kitchen." Right now. Nathan hesitated, reaching for the tray, but Michael's voice cut through, quiet but firm. "Stop. I don't need someone to clean up. I need to meet whoever let this burger leave the kitchen." Nathan glanced around, stepped back, then rushed into the back. A minute later, Megan walked out. She moved fast, confident steps, a half smile already prepared. "Hello, sir. Is there a problem with the burger? I'm the shift manager today." Michael didn't return the smile. He pointed again to the burger. "The problem is here," he said. "I opened it and found cold meat, frozen cheese, and this." He held up the torn label. Megan took it, but before she could speak, a loud cough came from the kitchen. An older man, bald in a worn white chef's coat, stepped out, still holding a bag of meat with a faded label. "What's the issue?" he asked, looking at Megan, visibly annoyed. Michael calmly asked, eyes locked on the meat bag. "Where did that come from?" "Cold storage," the man replied. "Just pulled it out for the evening shift." Michael stepped closer. He stared directly into the man's eyes, not with anger, but with a calmness that sent a chill down everyone's spine. "I'm Michael Foster." The air behind the counter froze. Megan swallowed hard. The older man stood stiff, lowering the bag of meat slowly. "I think," Michael continued, "now is the time to tell the truth, starting with who authorized the use of expired ingredients. Because if I open that freezer and find anything else like this, then everything you've built here will collapse within 24 hours. That statement wasn't a threat. It was the truth. Everything he saw, heard, and felt in less than 15 minutes, was enough to understand what was happening beneath the surface of a normal operation at a Foster's Grill. A customer near the door quietly pulled out their phone to record. A young employee stared down at the ground, and behind the counter, Megan was trying to stay calm, but her right hand was visibly trembling. The secrets were starting to surface. No camera needed. No one had to confess. Just by lifting the bun of a seemingly ordinary burger, everything that had been hidden for months was now beginning to rise. And Michael Foster had no intention of stopping. It was Tuesday noon. No rain, but the road was still cold and damp from an early downpour. Wet streaks on the pavement reflected the blurred glow of the Foster's Grill sign ahead, a familiar part of life to locals like the grocery store or the corner barbershop. The glass doors slid open. A soft bell chimed. The scent of grilled meat, buttered toast, and Foster's signature sauce blended in the air, a comforting olfactory habit that put regulars at ease the moment they stepped inside. Branch? No. 7 sat nestled in a crowded residential neighborhood near a high school and a subway station. Customer flow was steady, especially at lunch office workers, hungry students, and Uber Eats drivers lined up to grab their orders. Everything looked ordinary. The kitchen was partially open. Customers could see the massive grills inside. Staff moved constantly dressed in bright red Foster's uniforms, black aprons, baseball caps tilted high. The clatter of pots and pans. The sizzle of hot oil. A familiar call from the counter. Classic cheeseburger, double beef, no pickles ready on tray. Michael Foster sat at a window table, a spot he chose for its wide-angle view of both the restaurant and the kitchen. A faded khaki jacket draped his shoulders, his left sleeve slightly frayed. A gray cap pulled low, covering half his face. He flipped the plastic menu, not to read it, just to keep up appearances. No one in the restaurant recognized him as the man who had designed that entire menu. 18 years ago, he had grilled his first burger after hours in a rented kitchen behind a laundromat. 3 years later, he opened his first branch. Now the chain had more than 60 restaurants across the Northeast, but he still remembered every grilling ratio, every sauce, every type of bun. And today he wasn't there for nostalgia. He was there to inspect. 3 days earlier, an anonymous message had landed in his personal inbox, an address known only to a few close friends. The message was short. No signature. Just one chilling line: you should try the burger at Branch 7. Open it and look inside. That line gave him chills. Not because of the accusation, but because the sender clearly knew who he was. They knew he was the kind of man who would show up in person, sit like a stranger, order his signature burger, and actually open it to check inside. And that's exactly what he did. When Michael walked in, the first person he saw was a lanky young man at the prep counter, acne-covered face, secretly glancing at his phone under the counter. When a customer approached, the boy stood upright, abruptly shoving the tray back like nothing had happened. A small gesture, but Michael caught it like reflex. Another woman, about 30, with brown hair and a tight bun, was speaking to the head cook inside. Her voice was clear. Do we have any batch left from Lot 6? If not, just use Lot 17. The customer won't notice. That line made him look up. Lot 17, he had ordered that batch to be destroyed due to improper storage temperature. How was it still here? Michael etched that into memory, along with her image, Megan, if he remembered correctly from the staff roster. When it was his turn to order, he didn't rush. Classic Foster's burger, he said evenly. Medium. No pickles. Eat in. The boy nodded, entered the order, never asked again. No suggestion of new items. No upsell. No smile. Add one more item to the list. While waiting, he watched the kitchen more closely. One staff member was grilling meat, still wearing gloves, but using the same glove to hold a phone pressed against his cheek. Another quietly opened the freezer, pulled out a bag of meat, glanced at it, then tossed it into the tray without checking the label. A few years ago, if Michael had seen this, he would have walked straight into the kitchen without saying a word. But today, he wanted to see the whole picture, not just one mistake, but the entire system behind it. The waiter, brought the tray out, and set it on the table. Michael gave a faint smile. Thanks. The burger was wrapped in wax paper as usual. A red label handcrafted since 2004. Below it, a stamped code shift, a to Megan. A strange coincidence. He didn't open the burger right away. He picked up a plastic knife and cut it in half slowly, like the habit of an old chef. And right then, he saw the meat inside showed signs of freezer, burned the cheese, cracked, and a strange piece of paper stuck to the edge of the bun. He gently pulled it off. Faint letters appeared used by 10/19, do not refreeze. Today is the 23rd. Behind him, a whisper, he's not gonna notice anything. Just swap the label. Michael didn't turn around. He only looked down at the burger once more and knew. This meal wasn't meant to be eaten. It was evidence. And for the first time in years, he felt a chill down his spine because of the very system he had built. Michael Foster always believed that some things might seem trivial, but reveal the soul of a system most clearly. A burger, for example. It's not just meat and bun. It's a process, a principle, a silent trust between the one who grills and the one who eats. A burger, when done right, gives people peace of mind. But when it goes wrong, it can shake an entire empire. And right now, the burger in front of him was speaking a truth no one in the restaurant dared to say aloud. Michael set the top bun down on the tray. The meat had a strange dark tint. Along the edge, faint white specks, early signs of mold starting to grow. He used the tip of the plastic knife to scrape the cheese. The sauce beneath had solidified into a greasy streak, not melting into the meat the way it should. A faint sour smell rose unclear, but enough to tighten his gut. The edge of the patty showed tiny cracks, classic signs of frozen meat not fully thawed before hitting the grill. Michael didn't need to check further. This was a serious violation. And the most painful part was, it wasn't accidental.
He pulled a napkin, wiped his hands, then looked around.
The whole restaurant carried on as if nothing was wrong. An older man near the door was eating his burger. His wife was wiping their grandson's chin and turned to ask, "Bit chewy today?" The boy didn't answer. He just kept chewing slowly, his face unhappy. Michael turned back to his meal. Now he saw beneath the bottom bun, pressed tight against the inner layer, was a thin piece of paper. Like a torn-off part of a label, someone had rushed to hide it but forgot to peel it all the way. He gently pulled it off. On the damp paper, the ink had smudged halfway, but one phrase remained clearly visible: use by 10/19, do not refreeze. Today is the 23rd. Just 4 days, but by Foster's Grill's internal standards, the gap was unacceptable. The system was built so this would never happen, and now it was right in front of him on the tray he had ordered as a stranger. A sharp chill ran down his spine. Michael placed his hands on the table, sat still. No one in the restaurant knew what had just happened. Only him, the burger tray, and that thin slip of paper, a quiet trace someone had tried to hide. At the front counter, Megan was chatting and laughing with the staff beside her. She glanced toward the kitchen, then turned back to the computer, fingers moving swiftly across the touchscreen. A moment later, she leaned over and said something to the young boy standing next to her, voice low enough that no one could hear, but her eyes pointed directly at Michael's burger tray. Michael caught that look. It wasn't just a glance. It was an inspection, like she was waiting to see how he'd react. And then, something strange happened. The young server Nathan approached Michael's table. He didn't say a word. He just reached out toward the tray as if to take it away. Michael tilted his head. "What are you doing?" he asked softly. Nathan paused. I just saw you weren't eating, so I thought maybe you wanted a different dish. Who told you to come here?" Nathan hesitated. No one, I just saw the tray sitting there. Sitting there, Michael glanced at his watch. I've only been here 7 minutes. Nathan said nothing. Michael lowered his voice. Go tell your manager. I want to see the kitchen supervisor. Now, without waiting for a response, Michael stood up and carried the tray to the counter. No one said a word. Megan turned the smile gone from her face. He set the tray down gently, then reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a staff ID card. Not to brag, but to confirm I'm Michael Foster. A sharp breath was heard somewhere in the back. Not everyone in the restaurant knew who he was, but for those who had been with the system long enough, that name was impossible to mistake. Megan froze. Michael pointed at the burger. This meat should not be used past the 19th. And I just found proof right here in a meal served less than 10 minutes ago. Megan pressed her lips together. It might have been a storage error. Michael cut her off. There's no such thing as a storage error if someone deliberately swapped the labels. I don't know who did it, but I know this couldn't have happened if the person in charge was doing their job. She didn't respond. In the back kitchen, a short, broad-shouldered man stood still, his chef coat faded, a tray of ingredients in his hands. That was Bill, the midday chef, once praised for his precision and discipline. Michael looked him in the eye, waiting for confirmation. But Bill avoided his gaze, then turned and hurried back inside. In that moment, Michael knew this ran deeper than he thought. A system doesn't fall apart on its own. Someone has to loosen the bolts. And he wasn't going to leave until he knew for certain who chose to pull ethics out of every sandwich he once built with his own hands. The restaurant buzzed as usual for a weekday noon, but for Michael, every movement now felt off. After quietly placing the half-eaten burger back on the tray, he said nothing more. He sat down, hands clasped on the table, eyes locked on the kitchen through the narrow gap between two wooden walls. Between the callouts and the fryer noise, he paid close attention to every little action unfolding inside things most customers would never notice. The kitchen was partially open, not enough to see the full picture, but just enough for him to witness one of the worst scenes he'd ever seen in the business he built himself. The line cook, skinny-shaved sides, early 20s, was grilling a patty while checking his phone. One hand on the spatula, the other swiping the screen. He even smiled at something now and then. Michael swallowed hard. The way he flipped the meat carelessly, no temp check, no visual inspection. It said one thing: no one trained him, or no one cared anymore. 3 meters away, another staffer, Kyle, according to his name tag, held a tray with a finished burger. He didn't check it, didn't sniff it, didn't glance at the sauce, didn't verify the meat was fully cooked. Just glanced at the receipt and slid the tray toward the counter. The customer will receive their order in the next 2 minutes. And if no one speaks up, that burger, possibly just like the one you got, will be handed to someone who has no idea what's waiting for them. Michael stood up. He carried the burger tray to the counter. The usual smile on his face was gone. In its place, a piercing look. The look of someone who knows exactly what he's doing and exactly what he can no longer ignore. "Excuse me," he said softly. "Looks like I got the wrong order." Kyle didn't look up. "Oh, let me take it back." "Want to place a new one?" "Not exactly," Michael replied, gripping the tray firmly. "I just want to ask who's managing the kitchen today." Kyle hesitated. Bill was earlier, but he left. Now, it's Megan's shift. Megan, no one else supervising the kitchen. There's Josh on the grill, but Megan's in charge of this shift. Michael looked carefully at the worker named Josh, the guy flipping patties while reaching for a bun from the overhead shelf, still holding his phone in his other hand. "Does Josh have a food safety certificate?" Kyle shrugged. "No idea. He just started a few weeks ago." Michael exhaled quietly. So who decided to cook with improperly thawed frozen meat? Now Kyle looked nervous. He glanced around, then leaned in closer. Maybe it was the delivery yesterday, but we had to use it. Boss said we couldn't throw it away if it's still in date. Which boss told you that? Michael tilted his head. Kyle paused for a few seconds. It was the shift manager, Megan. She said if it doesn't smell bad, it's still usable. Customers wouldn't know anyway. That sentence dropped into the air like a blade slicing through his trust. If it doesn't smell bad, it's still usable. That seemingly harmless line was the most damning confession Michael had heard in the last 2 years. Because it revealed an entire belief system buried within this location, a system that downplayed risk, assumed customers were easily fooled, and treated food ethics as something negotiable. Michael nodded slowly. "Thank you." He returned to his seat, tray still in hand. His fingers brushed lightly against the inner pocket of his jacket where a metal name tag lay tucked, Michael Foster, founder and CEO, a badge he'd never wanted to use as a threat. But today he knew there was no other choice. A few minutes later, as he stepped back toward the counter, Megan appeared from the kitchen. Same thin smile. Same airy walk. Eyes darting casually across the room, as if everything was running perfectly. Michael stopped 3 steps away from the counter. "Excuse me," he said, voice low but steady. "I need a private word with whoever approved the use of expired ingredients." Megan froze. "Sorry, who are you? I think you should ask yourself that question before asking me." He pulled out his name tag, placed it gently on the counter. Megan looked down. Her face froze, then drained of color. Nearby customers began to notice. A waiter stood still, mid-step, soda cup in hand. And for a few seconds, even the sizzle from the kitchen seemed to slow down. Michael stared at the woman in front of him, as if looking directly into the system he once believed strong enough to self-correct. But now he knew when managers choose to look the other way, even the best systems can rot from the inside. Now he said, voice colder than usual, "You're going to take me to the storage room. And you're going to show me exactly how many more portions of this same ingredient are waiting to be served." Megan could no longer keep her composure. And for Michael, the investigation was no longer just an isolated action. It had become a DUTY. Michael didn't need any more evidence. The meat was spoiled. The expiration label had been torn off. Staff admitted the boss told them to keep using it if it doesn't smell. Everything was stacking up like layers of a cake no one could swallow. He silently pulled out his phone from the inner pocket of his jacket. No need to look for the number. He had memorized the 3 people he trusted most in the entire system, and this time he chose to call Angela. A longtime area manager. A former in-house chef. A woman whose sense of responsibility outweighed even the corporate standard procedures. "Angela," he said plainly, his voice low, "I'm at branch 7. I need you here in 30 minutes. Don't ask questions. Just come. And be ready to take over the entire shift. On the other end, no hesitation. Just one word, yes, sir." Michael hung up, took a deep breath, then walked straight toward the kitchen. No longer a customer. Not even the CEO. Right now, he was a man who had seen the truth with his own eyes, and no one could deny it. The stainless steel door swung open with a familiar squeak. Inside, the heat from the grill mixed with the smell of old oil, a scent he had banned since 2015, when the entire system switched to new vegetable oil. A few employees chatting quietly stopped mid-sentence as he entered. Josh, the young man grilling meat with one hand and holding his phone with the other, looked up at him, eyes vacant. He quickly shoved the phone into his apron pocket. But it was too late. Michael stopped in the middle of the aisle. "Who's in charge of food quality here?" His voice wasn't loud, but it froze every single motion in the room. Silence. A female employee, slicing tomatoes, paused. Another bottling sauce straightened up immediately. All eyes turned toward the back office door where Megan stepped out, her face paling with each step. She froze when she saw Michael. "You're Michael Foster," he replied, "founder of this restaurant chain. And I just bit into a burger that's going bad from YUR Kitchen." The air tightened, as if someone had just pulled all the oxygen from the room. Josh dropped his spatula. Another staff member, Bill, walked out of the cold storage, still holding a plastic box labeled "checked safe for use." His eyes met Michael's, and in that moment, all the color drained from his face. Megan stepped forward, trying to keep her voice steady. "Sir, there might be a misunderstanding. We checked everything according to standard. You're telling me I don't know what spoiled meat smells like?" Michael cut in. His eyes locked onto hers. Megan went silent. He walked over to the prep table. A tray of burgers had just been finished, ready to be packed. He didn't touch it, just bent down and sniffed lightly. "Which batch is this?" he asked. Bill answered softly. "Yesterday's batch. It was delivered at the wrong temperature, but still within date." "And you used it?" Michael asked. Bill didn't respond. "Did A and Y of you open the bag to inspect it, smell it, slice it, or at the very least check the expiration against our internal guidelines?" Silence. Megan forced herself upright. "Sir, actually, the delivery guy said it should still be usable. And I gave it a quick check. Didn't smell anything weird, so I decided to use it." "A quick check," Michael repeated, emphasizing each word. "Our quality process doesn't allow for quick. It requires THREE confirmation, steps, manufacturing date, storage temperature, and the condition of the raw material." "You signed off on this batch, didn't you?" Megan stayed silent. Her eyes flickered. "And you also told the staff to rush this afternoon's orders because the customers won't know." Michael repeated Kyle's exact words. At that moment, Kyle walked into the kitchen, his face drained of all color. Megan turned to him, eyes blazing. "Who did you tell?" Kyle muttered. I thought he was just a customer." Michael raised a hand to stop them. "You did the right thing. You were honest, something many people here have long forgotten." A beat of silence. Michael looked around at the entire team. "I didn't come here to find someone who made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes," he said. "But what I cannot accept is when a mistake becomes part of the system and is covered up, enabled, and even taught by the very people who are supposed to manage this place." One of the female staff began to tear up. Her name was Lana. She'd only been working here for 2 months. She spoke up softly. "I once saw a bag of meat that smelled off. I told Megan, but she said I was overreacting. She said if everyone was as sensitive as me, there'd be nothing left on the menu to sell." Michael nodded, his eyes growing heavy. The kitchen door creaked open. Angela stepped in right on time as always. She took in the room, instantly understanding without a word. Michael pointed, "You're to inspect every ingredient in the storage. I want a list of batches, delivery dates, who signed off, and the current condition of every single item in this kitchen within 2 hours." Angela said nothing. She nodded once. Michael looked back at the entire team, the ones lowering their heads, the ones standing silent, and the ones just waking up from a long professional slumber. And in that moment, he knew no one in that kitchen would ever again dare treat food as something they could trick the customer with. Angela returned earlier than expected. Not even 15 minutes after the call, she entered through the back door carrying a clipboard and an internal standard food inspection kit. She didn't need to ask what happened. One look at Michael's eyes, one glance at the frozen kitchen, no one cooking, no one moving, and she understood just how serious this was. "Food storage?" she asked quickly, eyes fixed on the stainless steel door at the end of the hallway. Michael nodded. "Check everything. Every single bag. Label clearly batch, delivery date, signer, and current condition. Anything untraceable, lock it and mark it with a red warning." Angela moved straight toward the storage, followed by 2 other employees who just finished their morning shift and came to assist. No more words were needed. Michael's presence alone told the entire store this time there would be no second chances behind closed doors. Then a small movement to Michael's right. The young waitress, barely 19, Lana, stepped closer, her hands clutching the edge of her apron. There was still fear in her eyes, but her gaze was clear and determined. "I'm sorry, Mr. Michael," she said. Her voice trembled, but it was steady. Michael turned to her softly. "You did nothing wrong." Lana bowed her head, fighting back tears. "Last week, I noticed a batch of meat. The color didn't look right. and the label looked like it had been peeled and restuck. I told Megan, but she said if I kept asking, I shouldn't bother coming back to work. Michael stood still. That sentence wasn't just a confession. It was the final puzzle piece, the one that completed the harsh truth about this place, a workplace where silence was rewarded more than honesty. An atmosphere where trying to do the right thing came at a cost. He nodded slowly, placing a hand on Lana's shoulder. "Thank you for speaking up." She nodded, eyes welling with tears, and stepped back behind the counter. Michael stood for a moment, watching her small figure retreat, then looked around the entire kitchen. Angela returned just over 20 minutes later, holding a marked-up inventory report. 8 meat packages from batch 17, she said. 6 show signs of refreezing violating protocol. Labels have been removed and reapplied. One of them has an expiration date, clearly marked as the 19th of this month. "Today is the 23rd, Michael said quietly. Angela nodded. Michael walked to the freezer and opened the door. The cold air rushed out, but it wasn't enough to cool the anger spreading through him. He grabbed a bag of meat and held it up to the ceiling light. Through the cloudy packaging, the meat had a pale, uneven grayish hue. The frost clinging to it showed it had been thawed and refrozen. "I want all of this meat locked down and sealed immediately. Red alert label, take photos, write a full report." Michael turned to Angela. "And send the report directly to the Internal Food Safety Division. Not through Megan. Not through Bill." Angela nodded again, but this time there was something stuck in her eyes. "Michael," she said softly, "how do you plan to handle this team?" Michael didn't answer right away. He stepped out of the kitchen, facing the entire staff lined up quietly under instruction. Kyle stood with his head down. Josh, the young guy who always used his phone while grilling, was clutching the brim of his cap so tightly it was wrinkled. Megan stood at the back, arms crossed, eyes confused and tired, but no longer defiant. "I didn't come here to fire anyone," Michael said, his voice low but clear. "I came here because I need to know, is there anyone in this system willing to trade quality, reputation, and customer safety just to make a cost report look prettier?" No one answered. He continued, "But I won't let anyone keep working here if they don't have the courage to take responsibility. Starting today, all shifts will undergo retraining, beginning with a course on food standards. And I want the first person leading that class to be Lana." All eyes immediately turned toward the shy young woman standing at the end of the line. Because she's the only one here who spoke up at the right time. Lana's mouth dropped open. I'm not a manager, you don't have to be," Michael replied. "You have something that many of the people with titles here don't. A conscience." A quiet breath escaped from the line. Some lowered their heads. Someone quietly wiped their eyes. Michael looked around. "And Megan, I want you to write a detailed report for every shift over the past 3 months. Who did what? Who signed what? Who received what? You won't be suspended, but you'll work under my direct supervision until I believe you deserve to keep this position." Megan gave a slight nod, eyes brimming with tears. She didn't apologize, but her face had changed. It was real shame. And maybe for the first time in her years as a manager, she understood what true consequences looked like. Angela turned to Michael, her gaze softening. "You didn't just save one location, you just saved the values of the whole system." Michael said nothing. He looked up at the menu board hanging on the wall, still showing the signature burger he used to make with his own hands. But today, for the first time in years, he didn't see the dish. He saw the people behind it, and realized true quality doesn't lie in ingredients, but in the honesty of the person who serves it. The door closed behind the last group of staff leaving the storage area. Outside, dusk had settled. The last rays of sunlight slanted through the glass, casting a calm golden hue across the empty tables. The restaurant now had no more ticket calls, no more sizzling grills, no more scent of sauce. Only silence for the first time that day, true silence. Michael looked at his watch. 3 hours had passed since he halted all operations at the location. The storage had been inspected. Substandard ingredients sealed. The inventory list rested in Angela's hands, ready to send to HQ. But there was one thing that couldn't go into a report, the unmistakable feeling lingering inside everyone left here, a silent but profound reckoning. Megan sat at the far end of the counter, quietly writing her report. There were no defensive glances, no excuses. Her face showed exhaustion, not from the work, but from finally having to face the cost of turning a blind eye for far too long. A few tables away, Lana was tidying up the drink station. Her hands still clumsy, but the focus on her face caught Michael's attention. He slowly walked over. "What were you studying before you came here?" he asked. She froze, then turned her head. "I was in a food science program, but I had to drop out because my family couldn't afford it. I started working here to save up so I can go back." Michael paused for a beat. "Did you ever think one day you'd have to speak the truth about what happens in the kitchen?" he asked again. Lana nodded, then shook her head. "I feel like everyone knows, but no one dares to say anything. Sometimes I thought maybe I was just being dramatic. But when I saw that moldy meat get wrapped up and handed straight to a customer, I knew that if I stayed silent, I wouldn't be able to look anyone in the eye again." Michael smiled. He didn't say "well done" or "you're brave." He simply nodded and pulled from his pocket a new employee badge, the kind used for the internal review team. "I want you to join the new quality control unit," he said. "No degrees needed right now. Just keep the same instinct you showed today, and learn day by day." Lana bit her lip. "I don't think I can. I think you can," Michael interrupted, eyes locked in. "Because not everyone has the courage to stand tall when the whole kitchen looks down." The room sank into a deep pause. Michael turned back toward the counter, where Angela was finishing the report. He walked slowly over, rested lightly against the edge of the table, the very spot he'd stood years ago when the restaurant had just one single location. An elderly customer stopped at the doorway, peeking in. Closing early today, Angela started to reply, but Michael raised his hand. "Just for now, sir. But tomorrow we reopen for real." The man smiled, nodded, and walked off. Michael watched him go, eyes filled with something deeper than pride. Angela came up beside him, voice soft. "I know you're upset, but I also know today some people in here won't ever be the same again." Michael gave a gentle nod, and that's a good thing. A few moments passed. Then he turned and asked quietly, almost to himself, "Angela, do you know what makes a burger? The reason someone comes back because it tastes good," she guessed. Michael shook his head, eyes still fixed on the menu board above. "Because people believe what's inside is real." Angela didn't say a word. She just smiled and quietly walked away. Michael stood there a moment longer, then turned back to the stainless steel counter. His hand brushed the cold surface, the place where hundreds of burgers had been laid out, feeding thousands of people each month. He looked up, taking in the space, every chair, every path, as if reading an old chapter one last time. Just then, Angela returned, report in hand. "Should I send it out tonight?" she asked. Michael nodded, then answered softly, "You don't always have to open a burger to see what's wrong. Sometimes you just have to open your heart and listen to someone young like Lana." That line wasn't a conclusion. It was a beginning. That day didn't end with a checklist. It ended with a slow, steady shift, sparked by the smallest voices, the ones brave enough to speak up. This story isn't just about one spoiled burger. It's a wake-up call about trust, professional ethics, and how even the strongest systems can fall apart if leadership refuses to listen. But it's also a reminder sometimes all it takes is one young person with the courage to speak out to change everything. And tomorrow Foster's Grill at Branch No. 7 will open its doors again, not with a new sign, but with a new spirit, a place where truth begins with the tiniest thing between two slices of bread.